That's the Queen Sharon. This is getting a bit loose. Yeah.
It is very challenging bringing on powerful beyond words. So we say Hotep, greetings, Aquaba, hey, look, Wagwan, all of those terms as we prepare for yet another powerful vibration amongst African Queen Mother Warriors Rising, our 2025 series, where we have versations around building new legacy, around the work that African Queen Mother Warriors have been and will continue to be engaged in. I'm African Queen Mother Warrior, Sister Dr. Shanzira. I'm so honored to be in the presence of greatness, of excellence, of omnipotence, ever-present revolutionaries that are unapologetic and graceful, yet fierce. With that being said, I will move part of this conversation to one of our other sisters because I'm joined and flanked with a powerful crew, and that is to ask Sis African Queen Mother Warrior, Sis Dr. Sandra, to share with us, along with African Queen Mother Warrior, I Sis Bastu Ast, and prayerfully we will be joined by our African Queen Mother Warrior, Esther. Give thanks, Sis Doctor.
Peaceful greetings to all, and peaceful greetings to the reflections of I, who are most powerful, unapologetically blickety black African Queen Mother Warriors. Glorious, 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 glorious Grand New Rising to you both and to everyone, actually, in this space that we have created, not seeking permission, actually arriving in a place where we as African queens recognize our power and we sit on our thrones together. And when we look at each other, we see ourselves. They do say, I don't know who they are, but in this case, I do agree. Show me your company and I'll tell you who you are. And so when I come into a gathering with African Queen Mother warriors, it feels like home. So glorious greetings and a warm welcome to one of our founding African Queen Mother warriors, I, Sis Basu Ast. Welcome.
Greetings, Uja. Now, I'll make sure I pronounce this correctly. Aboye, Aboro Aboye. So I stand here, or I sit here, I stand as an African Queen Mother warrior first and foremost. I always say this about myself. I'm an African woman of the Yoruba nation, born in the beautiful islands of Trinidad and Tobago, currently located in the UK. And I give thanks and praises to our ancestors, and particularly our queens, our goddesses, and our empresses. And I feel very, very honored to be in alignment and in the company of these two spectacular queens, goddesses, empresses. And of course, our Empress, Goddess, Queen, Sister Esther will be joining us to join up so that there are four of us to increase the numbers of the African Queen Mother warriors. And I give thanks for the work that has gone into creating this series of podcasts, because it ain't easy. Not like all of us have plenty free time to be doing this. So give thanks to the queens for initiating this and for us moving forward and spreading our energy, sharing our intellectual, spiritual, cultural, and just, our words, our thoughts, and our views. This is a really important step. Asheo.
Asheo, asheo, asheo. I think it's really important for those that have not been with us in the past to just have like context when we're speaking of African Queen Mother warriors. And while it had its resurgence, its recommitment in April of 2015, coming up on 10 years this April, this particular broadcast allows us to use like multimedia to really extend knowledge, to extend wisdom teachings around the royal, revolutionary, ma'atical, truth grounding, justice focus, order, reciprocity, balance, divine righteousness, and harmony around historic, current, and of course, futurist affairs that impact African people, our families, our men as well as our women, our children, our elders, our eldresses, and all of humanity. Yeah? Our focus was within African Queen Mother Warriors has always been to share our voices with action. So we're going to talk, but we're talking with already the background in place to take actionable steps so that we can produce actionable, remember the hashtag, actionable deliverables. What that look like, not just what we say, but what we're going to do, right? And the intention is so that we can respect and reorganize and revolutionize our contributions, our sacred works, our sanctified works, our rites of passage, our ancestral legacy strengthening activities, programs that really facilitate our work amongst African Queen Mother warriors, our sisters, our daughters, our aunties, our grandmothers, our great grandmothers, right? Our daughters, right? When we hear us say Naturt Moot, we're saying godmothers, because we know that we go deeper than just God. So when you hear us speak of Naturt Moot, we're just speaking of the godmothers, yeah? And just again, the nieces, don't forget the nieces, them, because I know last time I overlooked that. So part of what we're sharing here is that, and it's a continuation from something we started in December of 2024. And then we had a second gathering again on the third Sunday of each month, 8 a.m. Atlantic, noon UK, and then we can do all the other delineations of time because we know they've done shift that too. But our focus has been around strategic, this particular engagement is a continuation from what we did in episode 2 around strategic hijacking of our movements, reparations, African women realities, and future action. So part of what we're sharing, and that's why we started with a very short video, which as we expand and share reflections, when you all come, it's going to probably expand to like a mini film. That's probably what's going to happen because we're learning to share other powerful, revolutionary, strategically engaged, spiritually centered African Queen Mother Warrior leaders. Some are ancestresses and others living, breathing right now in the forefront, in the trench, if you will, yeah, trotting. And we'd like for persons to just be aware, to be mindful, to be reflective of some of those persons of greatness that we bring to truth to power. I was corrected the other day. Truth as power. Truth is power. Right. So that we do that,
Asheo.
so that we do not just speak of it in a cliche space, but like how are we putting it into practice, like on a day-to-day, moment-to-moment, squinet to squinet, shorter than a second in our flow. So I would love for us to at least, just make one as we speak of being one another's reflections, making sure that we are in a good space, that we are balanced, even in the midst of Isfet, the opposite of Ma'at, the chaos, the disorder. Some like to quantify it as demonic, diabolical chaos.
Okay, now.
That one, you know,
that one right.
that one, because we really would like to speak to that for a moment and then jump straight into some of the actionable deliverables, things that we can support with you, African Queen Mother Warrior Sis Doctor, with you, African Queen Mother Warrior Isis, Basti Ast, as well as our African Queen Mother Warrior Sis Esther when she comes forth, because we already know when she comes, it's going to be hard and hot and rolling. Yeah. And for those that are in the periphery, those that are listening, we encourage persons, yes, watch us on the YouTube page at Our Speaks, but also look at the other platforms for everyone that's here, because the links are being shared in every sister queen's respective space and place. So with that, let us open up for conversation, shall we?
Hey, I'm very excited to hear from African Queen Mother Warrior Isis. That's who
Yes.
because I love her.
Yes, a lot to take in. I love you too, of course. Yes, a lot to digest. But the thing that jumps out to me as a beginning of conversation is the thing about language that Senator Dr. Chenzera just mentioned about the words that we use. Word, what was it? Word as power, power as
we tend to say truth to power.
That's it.
Right. That's like it's like the 1960s piece. And again, not to give it any question, right? And not to disregard it, but it's just a session with primarily African sisters, not all per se revolutionary in their own space, but it was powerful. They were speaking of how do we handle the chaos happening in the globe now that's emanating from the 48 contiguous US, and to focus on the future and manifesting that future that, well, actually, she said, we're manifesting the future that we desire. And she made it clear that she had a epiphany of not just truth to power, but truth as power or truth to power. That we, and that's a combination of what we would call Ma'at and Ubuntu, right? So it was powerful, even though it came out in English, which sis doctor has clarified that English is
not our first language.
Right. Allow for us to bring in our more ancestral, ancient, indigenous, native, natural African languages, in contrast to just seeing it through a lens of that limitation of English. Yeah.
And so for me, it all comes back to this. Well, actually what Sister Doctor says sums it up so beautifully. English is not my first language. It's not our first language. It's the language of the oppressor. It's the language of the people who kidnapped our people and trafficked us into enslavement and chose to dehumanize us and to frame us in a dehumanized from a dehumanized lens. And for me, as someone who lives in England or has lived in England for many years, and I'm sure anyone who is on it understands the whole nature of language, the language of English is one of the most deceptive, hypocritical, really just awful, actually, language. It's predicated on that. It's predicated on, in fact, I think probably the best way to describe it, and using the words of an English white man, is doublespeak. And that comes, of course, from 1984, George Orwell, where, you know, war is peace and love is hate. You know, it's imbued with a very hypocritical back to front way of speaking. So for me, I feel it's really important, and I always reiterate the need for us to frame the language according to how we wish to express ourselves. So picking up on what you're saying, Queen, you know, why do we have to speak English the way they want us to speak English? It's down to us. English is actually, as a language, is a bastardized language anyway. It derives partly from German, is Latin, some French. So it's not some sort of pure sort of, you know, panacea to solving problems using English. It never has been, it never will be. And therefore, I love the idea of the reinforcing of our queens and our African people, our African nation globally. You know, creating our own languages. Wagwan. In Trinidad, oh yeah, we don't say all of you. You know, we have always changed language. Language is not static. So I'm really down with us creating our own language within the language that's being put upon us. So I love the fact that we talk truth, you know, truth as power. You know, we use understand or overstand. You know, we our spellings. I'm part of the Basu Nation now, which is my Kemetic practice as a Basu in the Kemetic yoga world, or Steph Sina Paut Netaru, as it should be called, or Smartawi. And we've created a newsletter, and we used NU. We're like, why are we going to use news, NEWS? News is all just like, it's all chaos, it's all confusion, it's all Setian, it's all Isfet. It's not actually, was it fake news, as the orange one says? So, you know, new letter, NU, just simple things, just playing with words, playing with language. And I'm really about restructuring it, just making it as we would. And as a poet as well, I you know, and a writer, I think it's really important. And even if we can get away with it in academic circles, where, you know, they really try and push this demon structured language on us, which is just, you know, however we can. So I'm really down with the idea of reshaping language to fit who we are, rather than us having to shape ourselves to fit that language. So I'll open with that. Giving thanks.
Wonderful. You know, I'm tickled. I'm literally tickled by our, you know, our pronouncements and our sharing and our prayer, because we are spirit having an earth experience. And so everything that comes through us is divine. So we are prayerful in our meditation when we're still enough, when we're grounded and anchored enough. We articulate spiritual messages, and sometimes we struggle to interpret it so that it manifests as English. And then those who are not in a position to validate us, to even fully understand who and what and why and where and all of that, attempt to assume authority over whether we are communicating properly. Bond that. That's what I say. I'm done. You know what I mean? I'm done. I'm done creating. I'm done being a portal for divine messages and actions, and then going to people who will never, ever understand who we are, to ask for their certification, accreditation, valuation, evaluation, any I'm done that don't have the authority. And yeah, the orange one pronounces, and other people of varying shades of nonsense, or as a girlfriend will say, nonsense, proclaim whether or not what we're doing should be considered valid. I mean, why do we give them that much power? I want to breach every single parameter that has been put on African people to make us small. Even calling us a minority minimizes us. How dare you? Coming up to me and speaking to me. How dare you? You're not invited to speak to me. And some people may say, well, who do you think you are? Well, yeah, ask the question. I may not answer you, but I think it's okay for me to assume my majestic divine presence and not wait. Who are we waiting for? We are the ones we're waiting for. And we need to give permission to those coming through. We need to give permission to each other. And we also need to acknowledge those who have gone before and those who have transitioned. There are still some here who are feeling like all that they've done has been in vain. I think it is for us to be revolutionary. It is for us to assign titles, and even those who I have given the title demon because they lead in a place that is often demonic. Truth as power is what we should do. And you, African Queen Mother Warrior, sis, I just love that. Sis, you know what I mean? Like, oh, wow. Yeah. As a broadcaster, as someone who actually trod God earth, yeah. So let Grammarly try and do something with that. I trod God earth to see, collect, return, utter, amplify all that is through our African lens without apology. As a broadcaster, I am always interested to be open to receiving those messages that you bring through and the people that you bring through. We are currently focused on the hijacking of a movement of repair by ones who have assigned themselves as leaders and are not accustomed to being challenged. Maybe it's because of their penile position. I don't know. But I ain't really feeling that, you know what I'm saying? Because you know, I'm gonna keep it real and authentic. That's not how you spell raw, but yeah. So I'm keen to listen today because when spirit starts coming through me, even I am the first to hear what I am saying. Give thanks.
Give thanks because part of what has been resurfacing in these versations are, and for those that are listening for the first time or for the second time or for the third time, it's really important to recognize that when sisters come together, it's stronger than a boulder. And it's very grounding because women always look out for the children and the elders and those with special abilities and our men folk, along with our women folk that are navigating on how to engage with men folk or not, and the social order and economies and spirituality and the body politic and the environment and agriculture and education. You see where it goes? And the arts and all the creative forces therein. And ultimately, we work through to the best of our ability while working to remain sane in a very insane global system and institutionalized machinery that persons think are traditions to keep women in a particular corner, well-kept space, or at best on a Barbie doll pedestal to just look at and frivolously engage. And that's not where African Queen Mother warriors reside, lie, rest, work, worship, or even recreate. And it's really important that persons do their best to come with a very open mind, a very open frame when we're having these conversations. So when you hear, about the orange man and the hijacking, that is very clear. It is not to marginalize or to minimize or to speak ill of the sacred intention of the liberation and total unification with social governance that is grounded in Ma'at for our people. It is not a attack on those that come forward in this earth's dispensation with the pineal gland versus a womb. It is not an attack on those leaders that feel very confident and very empowered in the greatness of their work and receive accolades can't finish. What it is that we have decreed, not declared, not commanded, and mindfully, not even a demand. It is a decree. So it go, make it so.
Just be clear.
There's for the persons that hear some of the commentary, and if you come in the middle of it and don't understand, and notice I said understand the context, because some people come with an understanding of recognizing that it's a different, how do they say, there's a new world order. Everybody want to make certain spaces great again. So we're following through on what our ancestors, what our infinite source, our creator, by all the names that we use to venerate our ancestors and creative source, to do what we're supposed to do. So this is not a complain session. This is not a we gonna whine and vent thing. It may appear so, but again, look at the context and the power that each of us bring to this particular realm, not even a banquet table. See, it used to be we taking crumbs from the table. It's an entire realm, not just a nation, not just a society, but an entire realm in an era that has moved from what people refer to, Pisces, fish going sun, to a very Aquarian, more correctly, a Hapi age that is fluid, that is feminine, not feminist, feminine. I want to make sure we clarify some of these terms, yeah? So the persons do not see a Eurasian feminist structuring, and not to say that many of us have not been influenced by that, but we're encouraging persons to look through the lens of truth, justice, order, reciprocity, balance, divine righteousness, and harmony, Ma'at. We're encouraging persons to see through the I am because you are, and we sit in a circle and we share Ubuntu, right? And that we can speak on these things. So when you hear us talking about whether it's CARICOM, CPAN, the Latin American Caribbean Economic Commission, the Organization of American States, the Organization of Eastern Caribbean States, the African Union, ECOSOC, the United Nations, the Permanent Forum for People of African Descent, the International Decade for People of so just know that we can do this one, right? Whether it's the All African People's Revolutionary Party, the Global African Congress, whatever entity it is that is moving in the vibration to help African families, African realms, societies, nations flourish and be in a space of power, not dominion, but a place of power that is inclusive and healing and spiritually grounded by infinite source. That's what we're speaking about. So if I come in a room and I don't feel comfortable, that don't go so. If I come into a space to provide my skills, talents, and expertise, and I'm marginalized to being a secretary, not even a secretariat, or I'm silenced, that don't go so,
Ooh.
right? And that's what we're speaking to. So just for those persons that just needed some context and some clarity on how these versations move us forward, how we as African Queen Mother warriors gathered after a convening, a very public convening, where some of these reparatory justice reparations pieces were put together, right? And again, love the intention, the sacred, balanced, principled intention, the inclusivity, the exclusivity, and disrespect. Nothing tawagusong. Nothing tawagusong. And that's what we're speaking to. And again, giving context, because there's some I've seen it. We can each go to our, well, I was at a conference and I shared some commentary, and when I asked for feedback, everybody sat there with deer eyes and just went to the next point. Didn't even engage. It was like I said, 5 minutes of work that I was trying to put 20 years into 5 minutes because they only gave us 5 minutes. And then it was just like, next, instead of engaging so that not only could the community that I was speaking to benefit from the essence and the key points that were shared on actionable deliverables around African sovereignty, around food sovereignty, around African upliftment, around the security of African family. I realized that it was, when you go to when we were in school and you would say something to the teacher got offended and put you in a corner, right? And you shouldn't feel like, none of us should be made to feel like that or to be told, well, we did tell you that we were having a meeting yesterday, but obviously you weren't able to. Did you get that email? Right. That kind of stuff is, yes, we've decreed another.
It's unacceptable, absolutely unacceptable. We see it. I think our behavior and our recognition of protocols means that we don't disrupt. But just because we're silent, it doesn't mean that we accept. And I think sometimes people are confused by our silence, believing our silence to actually be a sign of our agreement. Sometimes our silence is our own inner work. We begin to contemplate and meditate on what actually is taking place as efforts to silence or marginalize us continue. It is seen and it is felt and it is not appreciated. And by articulating, first of all, our point of view, we may invite people to stay far from us. That is not our intention. Our intention is to bring a richness, but because we're not speaking incomplete, like we're not following behind, because we're critiquing, because we have independent thought, we may be considered to be, well, of course you didn't get the memo because the memo was never sent to you. You were never intended. I did some research many years ago and I continue to update it on this idea of school. School is not about education. School is about ensuring that everybody speaks the same, knows their lane and stays in it, does not become what might be called uppity. We are conditioned to maintain a status quo. That status quo marginalizes women, and it does even worse to African women. We are positioned by that system, and some people hold up that system, and those of us who challenge it are viewed as unwelcome or Yeah, angry black woman. And you know, it's an interesting thing because I like to kiki. You know what I'm saying? I mean, listen, I like to just lay back and just relax and have a good time. But there's some spaces that I shouldn't do that in because uno are player with people and people children and God's children. And we are God's children. You know, if you play with us, you can do it to a certain extent until we say so far and no further. So some of us are not going to smile with us, with everybody, and everybody who looks like us. Melanin rich folk sometimes are a bunch of confused people because we want the appreciation and recognition of people in close proximity to a system of whiteness. And I ain't really feeling that. Because looking like we look, being who we are, coming from where we come from, is not a mistake. We are divinely ordained to do this work. So come, let me go. I'll play a little bit later. You know what I'm saying? I'm not playing right now. You know, some of us, it takes us a little while before we want to play. You got to show us who you are before we decide we're going to play with you. And some of you we shouldn't be played with. And I'm not just speaking about those who sit in a male place. I'm speaking to women, the feminine, who sit in a place that continues to marginalize and oppress the feminine. It's not balanced if it doesn't have feminine.
And that's the other reason why we are using these opportunities to be able to share how we can minimize the hijacking of any movement, but specifically ours, where there can be authentic inclusivity. And at the same time, if there's going to be some type of exclusivity, it should exclude those that shouldn't be in the room in the first place. That one. And it's amazing that in recent times, we've seen iterations where others that are, how is it? They not like us, right?
Hey!
Are put in spaces of power and authority around our realms, our circles, our institutions, our traditional entryways, our movements. And there is an intentional review of what we bring to the table that does not include those of us that are essential to that table, that room, that realm, that wombniverse, that space. And that's, and we're seeing this in a variety of engagements. And just as Sis African Queen Mother Warrior, Sis Doctor shared, it is coming through a space of what is acceptable. And again, don't get me wrong, it's wonderful to attend these webinars and seminars and conferences and congresses and meetings and gatherings and backroom discussions and dialogue and video chats and audio conferencing and podcasts and so forth and so on. It's wonderful to be able to be engaged. The trigger, and maybe that's not necessarily the best term, but people understand that. What is going to move it to actionable deliverables? And how do we share that without there being a judgment call? Like persons get upset. Why did she say that now? Is she saying that we're not doing enough? But we sent her some information. How come she doesn't feel inclusive? We didn't mean to offend you while we're offending you. So it's how do we undo that kind of psychological revamping of that chaotic Isfetian behavior to restore Ma'at and to restore Ubuntu? With that being said, that's where the conversation, whether it's the 10-point plan, whether it's the lack of inclusivity of the sixth region of the global African diaspora inside of the African Union, whether it is this this ethereal silence, please come and do your 2-minute presentation for the United Nations, and we're hearing you. And knowing that you cannot describe a millennia of madness impacting African people in 120 seconds. Just simmer on that. So unless you come with a whole, with 100 representatives that are this 2 minutes for this part, this 2 minutes for that part, this. And so I've observed that that is another strategy, that some people that should not even be talking, should not even be in the space of representation for us. And don't let me get started on the ones that say that they represent all of us in the globe and never, ever come to us to hear, much less listen. Don't read the reports. Don't look at the polls. Don't have conversation with us and then say that they are the leaders, the voice, the representative of us. And so that's why we have some of our brothers and sisters, specifically through more anti-imperialist, anti-capitalist, more socialist, and I say that in a quotation, air quotes, because socialism, as it was described in the 20th century, is really different in the 21st century. So you may hear us speak of social governance that's communal. You may hear us speak of scientific socialism through a lens of this technology that is reframing everything we do in the future. You may hear people talk about, oh, futurism and Afrofuturism. And we have collectively established, because we were African futurists millennia upon millennia upon millennia upon millennia upon millennia upon millennia upon millennia ago. So this may be new for them day, but this isn't new for us. And it's a continuum, right? And it's really essential that persons gather. And I'm saying it calmly because, you can get really emotional as this start to cost people, but that's not where we're going. It's Sunday morning. So we're putting it in a space of how it can be done, where it needs to will manifest, and that those that aren't capable of respecting and protecting and supporting, and I'm going to say that word that people don't like all the time, funding. Don't just give all the money to people over soul because of all of the letters after their name. Don't give the money over soul because those people will sanitize our revolutionary movement. We have to be really clear. This is a time where even philanthropists are being shaken up. Like we talk about earthquakes on the earth, philanthropy, that $1 trillion industry that people quietly sit back and don't say much about, has shifted because they know that if they don't do right by humanity, humanity will pretty much so make them just, what is that word? Disappear. Recycle them. How about that? Just some thoughts.
It's interesting that you raise philanthropy because I have a whole narrative around philanthropy, having been involved with it. But I want to go back again to the whole language and reframing. I was listening carefully to both the consciousness of yourself, Senator Doctor, and obviously African Green Mother Warrior, Sister Dr. Sandra as well. And what I found interesting is, this idea around the angry Black woman, around whining or complaining. But ultimately, again, coming back to language, there is no angry Black woman. There is no whining. What there is the demand for accountability. Our words and actions demand accountability. What we're saying to all the people that have been mentioned in the institutions and the organizations, all of which, well, most of which are neoliberal. They do not represent our African ontological or philosophical origins. Ubuntu is so far removed from who they are. Mahat doesn't exist within the constructs of what they are. The UN, the big educational institution in the Caribbean, the various other offshoots of, you know, the AU is an offshoot of the EU, you know, all of these organizations, not one of them actually has any genuine groundation in who we are as African people. And therefore, they're not accountable to the vast majority of African people. When I think of accountability and seniority and leadership and management and you know, the boss man or the boss woman who's at the top, I think of somebody like the young brother Ibrahim Traore, who has taken Burkina Faso to another level, following in the footsteps of Thomas Sankara. You know, when Thomas Sankara died, he lived in a traditional home. He owned a bicycle and a guitar. He had no gold and riches and bank accounts in Switzerland and big, you know, he didn't have any, you know, letters after his name. He was there for the people. So Ibrahim Traore now, in the way that he's been working with Burkina, he recognized immediately the strangleholds of these neoliberal institutions. You see, I can't even say them. English, not my first language. And if we think about the World Bank and the IMF, you know, two of the most evil organizations that have, you know, again, the double speak. It's just so, the IMF and the World Bank, like USA, none of these organizations have any interest in actually alleviating any of the structures that have unjustly enriched Europe, America, and these countries. They don't have any genuine interest in actually redistributing wealth that they have no entitlement to, that they stole, or restructuring systems and processes within their own institutions so that there would be equity around the economic redistribution of wealth, financial structures for the global South, for the global majority people. There's no interest. All it is about the continuation of exploitation and financial extraction. So Ibrahim Traore, one of the first things he's done is he's actually paid back the debt that Burkina Faso had with the, I can't now remember if it's the IMF or the World Bank or both, but he has alleviated those financial constraints, because ultimately they are shackles, they're chains, they're there to control us monetarily, to control our agriculture, our environment. They promote ecocide, they destroy any kind of social programs. You know, look at Jamaica, what happened to Jamaica, you know, when you had Manley putting in social structures, education, housing, employment, attempting these measures. The moment you got the Siaga, what was he? He was MI, no, not MI5. That's England. He was the other one, the FBI or the CIA backed man. You know, immediately they went in, big loans, you know, controls over what happened. All the social structure collapsed. Again, we have, if you look at the global South and you look at what we're expected to grow, crops through structural adjustment program designed to feed the West, to feed America, to feed Europe, the things that they want, their coffee and their chocolate and their tea and their sugar and their cocoa. I think I said chocolate already. All at reduced prices controlling us. So ultimately, all of these systems have no accountability and no desire to improve the liberty of African people globally. And so for me, I feel that the work that we're doing in raising concerns, in challenging, in speaking out, speaking up, speaking to, standing in our power, speaking truth as power, are actually part of the accountability mechanism that is owed to us, because we are the people, and the so-called leadership, the so-called people in decision-making powers are only supposed to be there at the behest of us. And without our backative, without our consent, without us endorsing these people, they technically have no power, no recognition. And I feel like that's one of the steps that we need to be taking as community activists, as the mothers of the nation, as the people who are actually on the ground, is, you know, withdrawing consent. And I loved what Sister Doctor said about the silence. Silence can simply be a withdrawal of consent. And I think our body language, our expressions, our silence, our refusal to acquiesce in their deception, because ultimately it is deception. You know, if if you look at the situation for again, coming back to the economics for the Caribbean and for Africa, the two regions in the world, one continent, the richest in the world, which has everything that we need. The Caribbean, we have everything that we need. And if we look at the diaspora, Africa and the Caribbean together, technically, I've been saying this for years, we don't actually need anyone else. We literally have every resource and everything needed to be the Garden of Eden, the paradise that we're supposed to be, both on the continent and in her diaspora. So the fact that our countries are on the list of those with the biggest economic problems. I think the World Bank or the IMF have a list of the countries that are the bottom countries, which they won't give loans to. If they give loans to, it's like, like redlining and stuff in the States, or in England when our Caribbean community tried to get bank loans and they were given exponentially high interest rates, whereas white people with no qualifications or in ordinary jobs were still given really easy terms for mortgages, for bank loans or whatever else. So it's the same system. And the fact that this is allowed to happen, and that our leaders are actually endorsing these programs by going back to the World Bank and the IMF, by going to the UN, by asking permission of these organizations, is problematic, because they're not accountable to us, and these institutions are not accountable to our leaders, and our leaders are not accountable to us. So where does the accountability come in? And it has to come, again, from the grassroots. It has to come from people like us who are in so many different spheres, doing all this work and seeing the real impacts on our health, the health of our communities, our elders, our children, mental health, psychological damage that's been done to us, the housing situation. There's nowhere in the world that you go that you don't see that our people, the most melanated, carbonated African people, in the worst housing conditions. Even if there's a small 1% in some great, amazing, Hollywood style mansions, the reality is for most of our people are in the most dire housing conditions. The education system is not fit for purpose. As Sister Dr. Sandra said, school was never meant for learning and critical thought and critical analysis. It was meant for indoctrination. The school, it was a German concept. It was there to indoctrinate men, actually, so that they would go out and commit mass murder on behalf of their governments, because they found that these soldiers would stop, or they'd pause. They wouldn't want to just shoot people. So it's all about indoctrination. It's what Karl Marx would call sort of the lumpen proletariat, putting our children into these schools so that they are educated to follow instructions, not to lead. So, all of these institutions, the healthcare system is not fit for purpose. We've seen what's going on. We've got people like Gates and the foundation and all, and these people going in and basically giving poison to our people. We saw what happened with the pandemic. So on every level, spirituality, you mentioned communism, socialism, all of these are African constructs anyway. Communal living, Ubuntu, societal projects that, they're all part of, if you look at the Nago Saba, the principles, the 7 principles of Kwanzaa, which come from African principles of unity, collective economics, all of these things. So it all comes back to us. We are the purveyors of all of these concepts. And therefore, we're not even supposed to, coming back to language, be using these words to frame us. Why would we frame ourselves as communists or socialists when Karl Marx came up with these concepts, and Lenin and Trotsky, based on what was already going on in Africa centuries ago? We remind everyone that we are hundreds of thousands of years old as an African people, our civilizations. Europeans didn't exist until 9,000 years ago. So why are we allowing ourselves to frame ourselves as feminists, for example, which is a white woman's power structure with a white man, inherently racist, has nothing to do with us African women. We can be womanists, we can be African women, we can create our own structures. And I think that's where the accountability comes in, us modeling how we see the future, the Afrocentric future, the Afrofuturistic liberty that we want. How do we create that? And it starts with accountability. It starts with us as a movement demanding and forcing the people who are placed into leadership positions to be accountable. So if you're in Burkina Faso, you're lucky enough to have Ibrahim Traore as your leader. You see a model of accountability, and there are other parts of the world where this is happening. You know, Mali has changed, Niger is changing. We've had leaders in the Caribbean, they were assassinated. In fact, we're going to have a talk about Walter Rodney later at Auntie Jean's market. Big shout out to another queen, African Queen Mother Warrior, the lovely Auntie Jean and her African market, Garvey market. I think it's the Garvey market. Oh, Sister Doctor will know because I know she was involved. So we're going to talk about Walter Rodney. We look at the amazing man like Walter Rodney and what was done to him. So we have got the models, and it's about Sankofa, looking back, claiming some of those models that we've had in the past, bringing them forward, and creating systems of accountability that mean that anyone in any position who is an African and represents and claims to be putting the love of our people and our history and our culture and identity and our spirituality at their core, that those people are accountable, that we hold them accountable through the work that we are doing, whichever sphere it is, and making those links and keeping those really strong bonds, specifically between African women, because as you know, there is no nation without the woman. And if we can model this for our elder sisters, our younger sisters, like you said, our cousins, our nieces, our sister-in-laws, our daughters, the whole plethora of the African woman nation, we will be able to ensure that we hold our nation in this accountability. I don't know what mechanism. We need a mechanism of accountability that just spreads across everywhere. And we need to challenge notions. We are not whiny women. We're not angry Black women. We're African queen mother warriors, empresses, goddesses, who are charged with holding our nation's leaders accountable.
Wow. Wow,
I hope
wow,
that
wow.
made sense.
Wow.
Not only did it make sense, but
wow.
Yeah, that's why you're hearing wow like echo.
Wow. Wow, 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 wow. I don't care much for Grammarly at the best of times. What you've just shared with us, African Queen Mother Warrior, Isis, Basu Ast, is very powerful. Accountability is key. And I think it's already been said, sometimes people be assuming positions, caring not for accountability, but collecting letters after their name, getting recognition in circles that have absolutely no merit and no nutritional value whatsoever, who have no consideration for where we will live as human beings, as spirits having an earth experience. They have no consideration for where we will live or how we will live, because their measures are very concerned with their own ego. If they have a title and they have an office and they have a car and they have titles and they're associated with various dens of demons, they believe themselves to be better than anyone else. If you cut them, they will bleed and they may holler louder than anybody else. If you have soil touch their flesh, they will become completely disgusted, not understanding that food comes from the earth, idiot. If you have letters after your name and you have an office and you're an idiot, then you're an idiot. And I actually don't need to go to any high school or any college or any other to work out that actually some people in certain positions should not be there. You have got there through nepotism, and you may have got there because of your ability to have, I don't know, horizontal perspectives in your things, and it's not what should be used as a measure. Some people are only interested in the earth when they can identify that there are minerals in there that will give them more wealth than they actually need or could ever spend. And some people have no shame because they speak of the minerals in the earth and they speak about renaming parts of the earth. I mean, Sometimes I listen to some of the things that come out of the mouths of people who are given a microphone, and I wonder where the engineer is and why he don't shut the freaking microphone off. Because nonsense is coming through it. Unearned privilege. Unearned privilege is a very interesting idea, and it is propped up by those of us who will not step up because we actually have privilege and we have powers that are divine, and we should assert them. We should do the actionable deliverables that our beautiful African Queen Mother Warrior Senate Doctor speaks of. Are you just an academic extension of some nonsense? Or are you making a difference in the world? And how can we measure that? Who tells you whether you're good? Or do you tell yourself you're good because of the very small circle you move in? You sit among people who actually are contributing to the destruction of the earth, you idiot. Why are you doing that? You are eating and you are drinking that which has no nutritional value, and you are killing people. You are working against the intention and the purpose of the Most High. You are using up oxygen when other people need to breathe. I have suggestions, which I will not express here, about what these people with all of these titles and these ideas should do with themselves. And I don't think they should have a comforter on their bed. And I don't think they should be anywhere where the earth brings forth fruit. I think they should all be together in a place where they watch each other get hungry and die.
And that might be an interlude for a possibility of an infomercial so that persons can process what was just shared very candidly, very ma'atically, and absent of silence. So we want persons to really simmer. You know how they say, who got the keys to my Beamer?
Zim Zimmer.
Right. Or you see how we shift to that? Like we need that lyric, that song. That's why I hope persons gathered that from the beginning, the whole vibe of using Sister Queen, Desiree, international, phenomenal musician, songwriter, artist of love. Sometimes people, when you're saying love is a meditation and that love is a vibration, it doesn't mean that sometimes when we're sharing that love, it becomes medicinal. And remember, some medicine is bitter. Some medicine isn't easy to.
But it's good for the belly.
Good for the belly. No kill you, right? And it's really important that persons recognize that even when we speak of that certain energies, certain vibrations need to die, it's that we're cutting off that which is no longer useful. When persons, irrespective of credentials, irrespective of training, irrespective of who all they know in all the meetings and all the people that they knew back in the day, if you become cancerous and it's malignant, it got to go.
That's to go.
Right.
To go.
Right. Like that.
That we have no place for the educated fools. That funny way to say educated fools. We don't need them.
That's it. And what we're moving in this dispensation, and I keep coming back to like what used to happen in the 20th century, because there's a number of eldresses each of us can speak to that when we begin to share with them some of the experiences that we've had in the 21st century, they just look at us. I wish I can get that face that was like, you surprised? Okay. And I'm like, wait a second. So you're saying that this has like been going on like every generation? Like this is like an intergenerational curse. And they would express to us, at least again, we could easily, and we don't have to name names because we know the process. And we don't have to deal with geographic location because we know this is global. This is something that is happening and impacting African Queen Mother warriors our sistren, their daughters, their granddaughters, their nieces, yeah, globally, right? If you can say, and I make sure that I say this with the most respectful outcome that is possible, what mindset releases men from prison to then send them to a women's prison facility to rape the women? Which demon is that? And how is that demon trained? Right. And that's the type of thing. So when we start to talk about our African family, people like to go to the what our African family's dysfunctionality is false, right? Instead of recognizing, well, perhaps we can go to the root of that dysfunction. What are the institutions that facilitate that? What are the behavior patterns that we encouraged? What did we feed those Africans? What did we inject in those Africans? What did we teach those Africans and made them think that that's normalized behavior? And then we want to sit in the periphery after we've created this. Oh my God, how could they? Right. So that kind of hypocrisy is the other part that we, as African Queen Mother warriors, have decreed the end to, right? And I will pull on some things that our illustrious African Queen Mother Warrior, Sister Esther, shared with us through a legal frame in previous conversations and in previous podcasts. So I keep coming back and encourage those that are listening, those that are viewing, please look at the other portions so that you get more context and more depth to what is being shared here as well, right? But she kept highlighting, we have to move beyond the acceptance of ancestral treason. That one. And we have to make sure that we are utilizing a very homegrown grounding to ensure that how we move forward, and whether we're calling it revolutionary, progressive, conscious, educated, edifying, all of those things, it has to be at the very core inclusive of women folk, not by happenstance, not by male-driven permissions. And see, I'm saying things that I had the opportunity, that's probably why they haven't invited me again, to share in a very open platform during the Accra Reparations Conference in 2023 in Accra, right? And it was beautiful to be able to have a platform that many of the men that needed to be in the room hearing about African women's affairs and so forth, they were elsewhere
Back
during
room.
right, the backroom convening in a beautiful space. And again, and maybe they did look at the video, but the intention is that these are the types of conversations we're having, just like we are able to sit and be polite and show restraint and make sure we are not disruptive when we're hearing the male dominant arenas of dominion speaking for us, claiming we're inclusive, but we're really not. Then there has to be that reciprocity where they need to sit and listen and then make corrective actions. Men, I want you to apologize if you don't correct your behavior.
You know what I'm saying?
Telling me, I'm sorry, I didn't intend to. That wasn't my engagement or my intention. If rape is rape, rape can
That's right.
come
That's right.
physiologically, it can be intellectual, it can be political. It can be sociological, it can be spirit, but rape is rape.
Yep.
And that's what has been, and again, sometimes we say these things and people aren't ready to have these types of conversations. And that's how come you have some of our sisters and brothers that don't have anything to do with any of these particular contemporary. And I make that distinction between traditional, speaking of Ma'at, Ubuntu, etc., and then these contemporary institutions and organizations, whether they're NGOs, GOs, whatever, right? NPOs, see as so, I mean, we can sit here and talk about how can you speak of civil society and you don't let civil society know that they're civil?
Listen, the intention is clear. The intention is to dupe. The intention is to build. It's like people are building empires in their own name for their own legacy because they have become warped. And you can't tell them, there's no one to tell them because they won't listen. Or if you tell them, you then become punished. There's this term unalive, right? People don't even want to say dead. People will come and kill you. If they don't kill you physically, they cut off your oxygen or they cut off your means of earning a living, and therefore you can't put food on the table, therefore you begin to deteriorate. It is intentional. Some people are leading from a place of don't tell me nothing. I have become the authority. I don't think that I should go any further in this particular discussion because
The
well,
details, the details, the details. Read between the lines.
you understand me. So let us recognize that bit by bit we will address this. You
Correct.
know, as women, we receive the seed and we hold it in gestation, in an incubator, in a safe place, and we nurture it into what it is supposed to be. So let us continue in that fashion.
Right.
That fashion is the way of nature. That fashion is divine. And all of these recent ideas of authority will soon recognize that they are not the authority. And I long to be present when that starts to happen.
Okay. And I'm grateful that you placed it in that context. I keep coming back to our African Queen Mother Warrior Sister Esther, because in addition to her being a trained scholar and knowledgeable of legal parameters, jurisprudence as a barrister, all of that, she also sits in that space of being the vice chair and leading the Pan-African Reparations Coalition in European spaces, yeah. And it facilitates something that requires strength and support in that work because that's being done, but it's also at the cost of doing certain advanced studies, making sure that there's food on the table, making sure that her contributions to family, community, nation, and our realms that we dwell in are held up high. So we are sending strength because she was to join us today, and life happens. And I think it's really important that we just hold sacred space with and for her, right? Along with other African Queen Mother warriors, many who I know, as we're speaking, I'm sending out these different links so that we can listen and we can share. If you have a commentary, if there's an area of specificity that you need us to draw on, if there are similarities in your community, in the realms in which you work and recreate and study and research and engage, that we begin to work together, not in a competitive, Eurasian driven, patriarchal, or extremely feminist space. And I want to be really clear on that because we're not bringing that in this sphere. Our focus is more of matriarchy. I want to make sure that we all in the same space, that matriarchal realm, so that we recognize balance and we recognize harmony. And in the initial realm, it may look like or it may feel like it's a feminist, the women that want to take over. No, African women must lead has been in the making for a long time. African women leading is just part of the state. I mean, this has been, whether it's the Universal Negro Improvement Association, African Communities League, RC 2020, and I'm very clear, when they heard of our experience in 2015, it shifted even that particular organization and others because it had, the men were like, we didn't know you went through that. That's what it looked like from that. And at least we had brothers, and those are the ones that I have no problem with speaking of as African king father warriors. Make sure that we click that, because they're willing to be in that realm to support, not direct, not demand, but to support how our African Queen Mother warriors engage. And they know that African women must lead. I think it's really important to highlight some of that.
I love this message. Maybe we close on this message that we love African men, and we love African, as you've just expressed, African king, father, warriors. I'm loving that, because that is my article. Yeah, I want to leave that there.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, I'm grateful, and I would love, before we close and put on what persons may not have seen in the beginning, to just get an idea of the grounding of love in this versation, where we're speaking of building a new legacy. We're speaking of our ancestral legacy. We're speaking truth as power, truth to power for African Queen Mother warriors and all that dwell within that, to share with us ways that persons can sustain communication with each of us, right? Whether it's through our email, our websites, our radio podcasts, our website, right? So please, I would love for, African Queen Mother Warrior Isis to please share ways that persons can link and support your work.
Good, thanks. I'm just thinking, I'm so awful on this. I believe my Instagram page is I_sis poet. You can find information about my radio shows. I also have a professional Instagram, which I believe is Isis Amlak, one word. And on that focuses more, and you can find me as isisamlak.com on LinkedIn as well. If you're interested in a more kind of my kind of I don't like the word professional, but the professional side, which is more the kind of facilitation, consultancy, the sort of stuff that I do, which thinking about what and hearing what has been shared, the importance of actually moving in a Mahatical way, in acknowledging and understanding, overstanding, and reclaiming our position as women, as African Queen Mother warriors, in recognition that way before there was ever even any European society, we in Africa had Mahat, and balance was the male and the female principle, and it always will be. It's a man and a woman that creates creation and creates life. And the woman has always been in a leadership role. We don't believe in equality between man and woman because we're not equal, we're different. We believe in equity. The woman has her role, the man has his role, and it's fundamental that we reclaim those identities and those philosophies and those processes and ways of doing things. Dash away anything that doesn't help and heal us as a people, feminism and all the other isms and schisms. So yes, reclaiming. I'm happy to be involved in any process that involves that and can contribute in many ways. I'm sure that the strength of the African Queen Mother warriors is also that we can model certain, what would I call it? Tools, maybe tools is the word, ways of doing things, of overcoming some of the barriers, the hurdles. There's a sister who always says they don't call it struggle for no reason. Some of the struggles that we've had and overcome, and our ways of moving. And I'm not moving when I use my hand like that, I'm thinking of moving in a strategic way. Maybe we do move like a cobra, or we move like some sort of energy, but actually moving and being in different spaces and changing, bringing about the change that we want in those spaces, making sure our voices are heard and that we are present and seen. So yes, I'll end with that, giving thanks for being in this space with these incredible energies, souls, spirits, the embodiment of the feminine African principle. Ashe.
Ashe. Ashe. I'll go next. Yes. How I can be reached. I am sis doctor. That's IAM SISDR. That's my Instagram identity. Through that platform, I can be found. The things I think are being shared. I'm also about to launch a 9-part webinar series called I'm Powerment. I'm Powerment. I am sis doctor. It's wonderful to be in the presence of the kind of women that I currently am in the presence of. The reflection that I want to see, I see in you both and in other African Queen Mother warriors. And my thoughts are also with our African Queen Mother warrior, Sister Esther, because it was her intention to be here. And in actual fact, she is here through us. And the next time we meet, it will be that we meet. Peace.
Peace. And I've expressed.
So can I just,
Please.
One little thing I should have added, because I always forget
to. Nothing's little. We come, we smile, but talawa,
If anyone, when people are watching, if you have a young person aged between 18 and 25, I've put together, working with Mboka, a course that will start on the 5th of March. It's online. It's a Pan-African course for young people aged 18 to 25, as I said. It covers history, literature, language. It's a 6-week course, so it's obviously a short course, but it's an introduction. We're really trying to meet and communicate with our young people who probably aren't in academic institution. I don't know what it is about that word, institutions. Cannot say that word. So
you don't like institutions.
I don't like institutions. Why? Yes, that's what it comes down to. It's a psychodynamic energy going on. But you can reach out at Mboka, MBOKA, education, as in education, at gmail.com, and we'll get back to you. It's a global course. It's for young African people, wherever you are in the world, as long as you've got an internet connection. 6 weeks, starting on the 5th of March in the evening at, I believe it's 6:30 to 8:30 or 6 to 8. So please reach out. We want to, one of our mechanisms for bringing about change is to ensure our young people are educated and learn about who we are as African people through Pan-African study.
And with that, the platform that we're in is one of the spaces. I encourage persons to subscribe to Speaks, because that's a space that you can share certain commentary. For today's podcast broadcast, that will be left up for others to view and listen to and rewind and engage. We really encourage you to send us emails, and I'll be very slow when I deliver it. African, AFRAKAN, Queen Mother Warriors with an S. Again, African Queen Mother Warriors with an S at gmail.com is a way that you would be able to get to all of us in one space. And you can look through our various platforms and profiles as have been shared, inclusive of our African Queen Mother Warrior Sister Esther, who has a website, is on Facebook, Instagram, etc., so that you would be able to ask questions. And I always recognize the importance of us to be coming forward respectfully in the critique. If you bring wire come too. But if you
that's
in love and tranquility and harmony and balance, so that we can all elevate and strengthen our African family, all will be maintained in Ma'at with Ubuntu at the center. And with that, we look forward to you joining with us again for another part of our conversations of Among African Queen Mother Warriors, our Rising series for 2025. Our next convening will be on the 16th of March, the same time, 8 a.m. Atlantic, noon UK. And just for those that may not know, March 16th marks the anniversary in the early part of the 1900s of warrior queen, Queen Mary, who led the Great Fire Burn of 1878 here in II St. Croix. Just a little fun fact. So just make sure that you come prepared to bring some of that fire. And again, through a lens of love, my sisters, my African Queen Mother Warriors, I am honored beyond words. There's no English term outside of me just saying metal, agape, cultivated, nurturing.
Nefa.
Nefer. And as we started, we will definitely go forward and make sure that we can close out accordingly. We like the persons that did not get a chance to see and embrace this particular video to just share this. That is just a snippet because there's more to come. Much more. Give thanks.
Peace.
Peace.